He has 3 seconds to live, and he knows it. His back is pressed flat against a mud wall in southern Afghanistan. His machine gun is empty, a dry click instead of a burst. 2 Taliban fighters lie dead behind the wall, but there was a third man. And right now, the long black barrel of his Soviet machine gun is sliding around the corner toward the Marine's face. He has 2 options: try to reload, turn and run. Instead, Corporal Clifford Wooldridge does something the Taliban will whisper for the rest of the war. This is the story of one of the most savage close-quarters fights of the entire war in Afghanistan. Helmand Province, southern Afghanistan. Summer of 2010. If hell had a zip code, this was it. For the men of Weapons Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, this stretch of desert was the most dangerous patch of ground on planet Earth. And underneath every dirt road was the very real possibility of a buried bomb. The Taliban owned this valley for years. Their money came from the poppy fields, the same fields that fed half the world's heroin trade, and the Marines were here to disrupt that pipeline. Take the poppy, take the cash. Take the cash, choke the war machine. The math was simple. The execution was anything but. The Marines of 3-7 had been bleeding in this place for months, and June 18, 2010 was supposed to be just another day on patrol. It would not be just another day, because the Taliban had been watching too. They had been counting Humvees, tracking patrol routes, whispering on cheap radios, and on that particular morning they were waiting. They had picked the ground, time, and they had picked their target. Corporal Wooldridge just didn't know it yet. The convoy moved out before the heat got bad. Wooldridge sat in the vehicle commander's seat. His M249 was on the floor between his boots, the squad's primary firepower, the weapon that punched holes in cover and pinned the enemy down so everyone else could move. In the right hands, it could decide a firefight in seconds. Wooldridge had the right hands. The Humvees rolled through dust and gravel. Radios crackled. The gunners up top swept the tree lines. There was no laughter, no music, just the rumble of armored trucks moving through territory that wanted them dead. Then they reached the village, and every man in the convoy felt it at the same time. Something was wrong. The doors of every mud brick house were hanging open. There were no children in the Allies. Just the wind, the dust, and the squeak of a door swinging on a broken hinge. The locals had cleared out. That meant only one thing. They knew what was coming. The Marines didn't. Not yet. It started as ambushes always do, with a single sound. A pop, then another, then everything at once. Rocket-propelled grenades came whipping in from compounds along the road, leaving white smoke trails in the air. Machine gun fire opened up from a tree line to the front. The K-47s crackled from a wall to the right. The Marines were not in a fight, they were inside one, surrounded. Rounds snapping past their helmets, slamming into the armor of the Humvees, throwing dirt up in fountains around the tires. A Taliban fire team, 15 fighters strong, had been waiting in the compounds along the route. They had RPGs, heavy weapons. They had picked the geometry of the kill zone, and they had sprung the trap perfectly. The company commander would later describe that moment with 2 words: a hornet's nest. The .50 cal gunners in the turrets opened up immediately, hammering the muzzle flashes with rounds the size of railroad spikes. Brass cascaded down inside the trucks. Smoke filled the air. A Marine shouted into the radio. Another was returning fire from his window. But Wooldridge was watching something else. He was watching the geometry. The Taliban had picked their position to ambush a convoy on a road. That meant if the Marines stayed on that road, pinned in the trucks, returning fire from inside the zone, the enemy held all the cards. They would burn through their RPGs, fade back through the village, and disappear into the green zone. Unless someone got off the road. Unless someone got behind them. Wooldridge made a decision. He grabbed his saw, kicked open his door, and stepped out of the armored vehicle into the open desert. Wooldridge took his fire team, a small group of Marines who lived on his orders, and pointed them toward a flanking route. They would do the one thing the Taliban hadn't planned for. They would attack. They moved across exposed ground, sprinting from cover to cover, rounds cracking past them. Every step was a gamble. Every patch of dirt was a place a man could die. Wooldridge led from the front, the saw chattering from his hip whenever a target showed itself, his Marines moving in his wake. And then, somewhere in the chaos, he saw them. Not the gunmen on the tree line. Not the RPG team in the compound by the road. A second group, hidden in the village to the side of the kill zone. Heavy weapons. RPGs already shouldered, waiting. They had not yet fired. They were the second wave, the surprise, the ambush within the ambush, and they were positioned perfectly to shred the Marine convoy from the flank the moment the trucks turned around. 15 Taliban fighters, stacked together, eyes on the road, backs exposed. They never saw Wooldridge coming. He did not hesitate. Wooldridge brought the saw up and opened fire from the flank, pouring rounds into the Taliban position before a single one of them could turn around. His fire team was right there with him, Marines pouring in from his side, adding their rifles to the storm. The effect was instant and total. 8 Taliban fighters dropped where they stood, wounded so quickly that some of them never finished raising their weapons. The RPG operator went down. The fighters next to him went down. The neat formation of an ambush team that had been seconds from killing their fellow Marines collapsed into a tangle of bodies and falling rifles. The remaining Taliban broke and scattered. Some fled deeper into the village. Some dropped their weapons and ran. The flanking ambush, the surprise that was supposed to finish the convoy, was over before it ever started because one Marine had decided not to wait for the enemy to dictate the fight. Wooldridge didn't celebrate. He didn't even slow down. His fire team was now exposed on the wrong side of enemy lines, deep in territory that had been crawling with Taliban a minute earlier. He needed to cover their withdrawal back to the convoy. He needed to make sure none of those scattered fighters circled back. So he moved into a position behind a low mud wall, a hard spot with a good line of sight, and prepared to provide overwatch while his Marines pulled back. That was supposed to be the end of it. That was when he heard the voices. They were close, just on the other side of the wall, the same wall he was using as cover. 2 men, maybe more, speaking in low, fast Pashto. He couldn't see them, but he could hear the urgency in their voices, the way men sound when they are about to do something violent. Wooldridge held still. Every instinct he had told him these were not civilians. Civilians had run when the shooting started. These were enemy fighters. They were regrouping, and they were about to come around the corner onto his corner to hit his Marines from behind as they pulled back. He had 2 choices. He could fall back, pull his fire team out, radio the threat in, let the convoy handle it, or he could end it right here, right now, alone. He raised the saw, moved around the corner, and he came face to face with 2 armed Taliban fighters less than 10 feet away, close enough to see the surprise in their eyes. For both sides, the universe collapsed into a single second. The Taliban fighters moved first. Wooldridge moved faster. The saw lit up, a short, savage burst at point-blank range. The first Taliban fighter dropped. Wooldridge swung the muzzle a fraction of an inch and put a second burst into the chest of the man next to him. 2 enemies down in less time than it takes to blink. He knew there were probably more. He pulled back behind the wall, and that's when he heard it. The unmistakable mechanical scrape of an enemy machine gun being lifted into firing position from right behind the wall on the other side of the same dirt brick he was using for cover. There had been a third man. Wooldridge had not seen him. The third Taliban fighter had been hanging back just out of the corner's line of sight. He had watched his 2 comrades die in a heartbeat, and now he was bringing his weapon up to kill the man who had killed them. Wooldridge had seconds. He started to reload. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the long black barrel of a Soviet PKM machine gun slide around the edge of the wall, searching for him, blind but seconds from finding him. A weapon designed to chew vehicles into scrap metal, about to swing in his direction. The reload was not going to happen. He had about half a second to do something, anything, that would keep him alive. He dropped his own weapon. That sentence is worth hearing twice. In the middle of a firefight, with a Taliban machine gunner inches from killing him, Corporal Clifford Wooldridge dropped his own gun because he was not going to outdraw a man whose weapon was already up. He was going to take the man's weapon away from him. Wooldridge lunged forward and grabbed the barrel of the PKM before the Taliban fighter could swing it on a target, and he yanked the entire enemy fighter clean around the corner of the wall and slammed him into the dirt. Then it became something the United States Marine Corps very rarely teaches and almost never expects: a street fight. The two of them went to the ground, both still gripping the rifle, rolling in the dust, throwing elbows and knees. The Taliban fighter felt he was losing, so he did the only thing left. He let go of the rifle with one hand, reached up, and grabbed for one of the hand grenades hanging off the front of Wooldridge's tactical vest. His plan was simple: pull the pin, kill them both. He never got the pin. The instant his hand left the rifle, Wooldridge ripped the entire weapon, barrel, body, everything out of his grip. The Taliban fighter, suddenly disarmed, unable to detonate the grenade, looking up at a furious Marine holding the man's own machine gun overhead, had a fraction of a second to understand what was about to happen. Then it happened. Wooldridge beat him with his own weapon. When the rest of the fire team rounded the corner, they found their corporal standing over a heap of dead enemy fighters. He was, somehow, completely uninjured. The wall was scarred. The PKM lay on the ground next to its former owner, and not a single American Marine had been killed in the entire engagement. Word of what had happened in that dusty corner of Helmand spread fast. In the weeks afterward, Afghan interpreters working alongside American commanders began bringing back something strange. They were talking about an American who had killed an entire fire team alone. The story spread through the insurgency in that valley like fire through dry grass, and it did something American firepower alone often could not. It broke their will to fight. For his actions on June 18, 2010, Corporal Clifford Wooldridge was awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest valor award a United States Marine can receive. The citation describes a flanked ambush turned, 8 enemies in an open assault, 2 more point-blank range, and a hand-to-hand fight that ended with a Taliban fighter beaten to death with his own machine gun. He was named USO Marine of the Year for 2012. Some Marines come home with stories. Corporal Wooldridge came home a story. Men like him don't get remembered unless we choose to remember them. Hit like and subscribe. The next video is already waiting for you.